On this Thursday night, Canada's Damian Warner dominates the decathlon and takes gold.
It was a dream come true.
His record-smashing victory at the Olympics. A dose of inoculation confusion.
Are they considered fully vaccinated? Are they not?
What happens to travelers who got a shot that's not approved in another country? And what could be required to enter the U.S.? Plus, one diver and his dedicated dad.
For my whole life, for the most part, it's just been him and I.
Defying the odds from an orphanage to the Olympics.
Global National with Donna Friesen. Reporting tonight, Farah Nasser.
Good evening, and thank you for joining us. We begin with yet another incredible feat by a Canadian Olympian. Damian Warner of London, Ontario, has become the first Canadian ever to win gold in the men's decathlon, and it is a truly extraordinary achievement. And it's earned him the unofficial title of the world's greatest athlete, and here's why. To compete in the decathlon, athletes must battle through 10 grueling track and field events separated over 2 days. Competitors get points based on how they perform in each event, and Warner truly dominated. He shattered the previous Olympic record with 9,018 points. He's just the fourth man in history to surpass the coveted 9,000 mark. Crystal Goomansingh has tonight's top story on Canada's newest Olympic champion and his remarkable push to the top of the podium.
In his 10th and final event in the decathlon in hot, humid conditions, Damian Warner looked fresh. The 31-year-old donned the leader's yellow bib for much of the two-day competition. He set an Olympic decathlon best in long jump, leaping an incredible 8.24 meters, a distance that would have been enough for a bronze medal in the men's individual long jump. In the 110-meter hurdles, he exploded out of the block, setting another Olympic best, finishing in 13.46 seconds. He dominated in nearly every event, and in the last leg of the 1500, he raced with unparalleled determination. Warner is the first Canadian ever to capture decathlon gold. His family back in London, Ontario, watching every second over the event's 2 grueling days.
It's been a long few days, not a lot of rest, but so it's pretty steady throughout. We're all just watching him have fun, give thumbs up every so often and smiling the whole time and putting up good results.
In winning, Warner also surpassed 9,000 event points for the first time in his career. A personal best now also stands as an Olympic record. It's something only 3 others have accomplished in the history of the sport.
It's so gratifying to see him on the big stage perform so admirably and get the medal he deserves.
The story of Warner training for Tokyo and the complex series of events is sure to become the stuff of legend. The pandemic kept him close to home. With no U.S. training possible and no access to Western universities' shuttered facilities, his supporters created a Made in Canada solution.
People from the community all came together when we built this makeshift facility inside a hockey rink, so it couldn't be more Canadian.
But making a facility from scratch isn't easy. They needed to find sand for long jump, build a high jump pit, and stay warm in a big uninsulated arena.
Dave said it was kind of invigorating to have everybody come together and be so positive about such a kind of negative situation.
The community effort paid off in spades. Warner not only upgraded his bronze medal from the Rio Games in 2016, but he secured a place in decathlon's storied history. Crystal Goomansingh, Global News, London.
There was more success for Canada today in Tokyo. Laurence Vincent Lapointe of Trois-Rivières, Quebec, won silver in the debut of the women's 200-meter canoe sprint. And track cyclist Lauriane Genet of Quebec won bronze in the women's keirin. Canada is now in 14th in the overall medal count with 18 medals, 8 bronze, 5 silver, and 5 gold. And just a note, if you're planning to watch the women's soccer final between Canada and Sweden, the kickoff time is being pushed back because of concerns over extreme heat. The game is now set to start at 8 a.m. Eastern tomorrow. That is 9 p.m. in Tokyo. COVID-19 is overshadowing the games like never before. Tokyo's case count today, it topped 5,000, the most since the pandemic began. Nationwide new infections reached 15,000 for the first time. And today, Japan expanded its COVID emergency measures to cover more than 70% of the population. The new rules include a ban on alcohol at bars and restaurants. And the Prime Minister is urging people not to travel for their summer holidays. Japan has been under a state of emergency since mid-July. Efforts to contain the virus have allowed public health measures to lift. But with that comes a surge in new daily infections, Canada's top doctor says. The average number of new cases is now over 900. That is a spike of 54% over last week. Dr. Tam says severe illness rates are declining as people get vaccinated. But for the millions of Canadians who mixed vaccines as instructed, there could be challenges ahead for travel. Abigail Bimman reports on what's being done to find a way forward.
Ironically, I guess selfishly, I took it because I really thought it was the thing that would get me back to normal fastest.
But because Brent Matheson got a vaccine combo, AstraZeneca and Pfizer, he can't take the 3 cruises he signed up for. Cruise lines, along with at least one Caribbean destination, aren't accepting mixers and matchers. If nothing changes, Matheson is out all the time spent planning several $1,000s for the cruises and up to $7,000 in flight credits.
It is stressful. I honestly have had sleepless nights over this.
He's not alone. There are at least 3.6 million Canadians who mixed vaccines, plus thousands more who got the Covishield version of AstraZeneca, not currently accepted by some European countries.
It's devastating. I think we finally feel like there's this green light and there's a glimmer of hope. And then again, we're told, just wait a second, it's not that simple.
3.6 million doesn't even include some Quebecers, but that province is already offering a 3rd dose to fix the problem.
It will get sorted out. It's only sort of a matter of time.
Infectious diseases physician Alex Wong thinks more provinces will consider a 3rd shot.
We're fortunate enough, obviously, in Canada, and most of the rest of sort of the first world has a relative abundance of mRNA vaccine right now. So 2 doses of mRNA vaccine probably are going to end up being sort of the standard.
The Canadian government stresses it's working with other jurisdictions to fix things, while Canada's top doctors warn we don't yet know the potential health impacts of taking 3 full doses.
It should be based on the science and not sort of, I think, on convenience factors or, based on sort of a policy, be it other countries.
If somebody offered me another Pfizer, I would take it.
Frustrating for so many people who took the first shots available as they were told. Abigail Bimman, Global News, Ottawa.
Turning now to the debate over vaccine passports. Several countries, including France and Italy, already have passport systems in place, and the idea is gaining ground in the United States. The White House is now considering a change to its travel restrictions. As Jackson Proskow explains, foreigners could soon be required to show proof of vaccination to gain entry into the United States.
As the world opens up to Americans, the U.S. has so far failed to reciprocate, banning entry for many foreign travelers and perpetually extending the closure of its land borders with Canada and Mexico.
We will be ready when it is the right time to consider reopening travel, and that'll be guided, as always, by the science and the public health.
For the first time, the White House has hinted what the future of entry into the U.S. might look like, including a likely requirement that all foreign travelers be vaccinated. Details about what kind of proof would be required and which vaccines would be accepted still have to be decided.
This is acknowledgement that there's really one way out of this pandemic, and it's broad vaccination by the entire world. You really do need to have some sort of minimum standards. Testing is not enough.
The explosive spread of the Delta variant in the U.S. has put any plans for loosened travel restrictions on hold for now. There are 60,000 COVID patients in American hospitals. CDC models suggest a continued surge of new cases in the range of 200,000 daily new infections by late August, driven by lagging vaccination rates in many states.
The biggest concern is that the virus will continue to mutate, and it will, and that it could become more deadly.
A vaccine requirement for visitors would land as domestic vaccine mandates ramp up. Los Angeles is the latest U.S. city to consider mandatory vaccination to access gyms, restaurants, and public buildings. New York City announced similar plans this week, all meant to encourage vaccination at home as the U.S. grapples with a resurging virus within its own borders. Jackson Proskow, Global News, Washington.
Over 4 million COVID-19 cases have been reported globally in the past week. The resurgence is prompting some countries, like Germany and France, to move forward with vaccine booster shots. Now, the decision defies a plea from the World Health Organization to hold off until at least the end of the month. Jamie Mauracher explains.
Living with 2 illnesses, Christy Dickinson takes a weekly immunosuppressant. And although she's fully vaccinated against COVID-19, her condition means she's constantly concerned about her level of protection.
It's just an additional layer of anxiety, I think, for most immunocompromised people.
Early research shows the most vulnerable among the vaccinated may see a significant drop in antibodies sooner than the general public. Marie-Josée Lafleur, who has Crohn's and also takes immunosuppressants, believes a booster shot could help.
By September, in my case, it's like I never got vaccinated because I won't have any protection from the double vaccination.
But Canada's top doctor reaffirms there isn't enough data to show boosters are needed now.
Our focus is, as we've said in our opening remarks, getting people their first and second dose for everyone who's eligible.
Bioethicist Carrie Bowman says this is the right move.
The way to deal with this incredible pandemic is to deal with it globally. And, again, focusing on boosters is moving us away from that goal.
Still, public health professor Barry Pegas wants to see some countries move forward with third doses.
And they'll be getting data from that over the next weeks to months. I think that is critically important to informing the decision globally about third doses.
First-time mom Kay Niedermeyer, who received vaccine priority because her son is immunocompromised, says while she worries about a fourth wave, she'll wait for any top-up.
Right now, I'm more concerned about sharing the vaccines with the rest of the world.
Dickinson agrees, but says it means her health is in others' hands.
I don't have the immune system to protect myself against this disease just on myself.
Hoping for a more lasting solution to this global pandemic. Jamie Mauracher, Global News, Toronto.
Speculation about a federal election. Coming up, why at least one party leader is concerned about a vote being called. Today, Quebec became the 6th Canadian jurisdiction to sign on to the federal government's $10 a day national childcare program. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau made the announcement in Montreal alongside Quebec's Premier François Legault. Under the agreement, Quebec receives $6 billion over 5 years. Trudeau has been traveling across the country in recent weeks, making campaign-style pitches for more affordable childcare. And it's all been happening as leaders of Canada's federal parties hit the road, making policy announcements and seemingly gearing up for an expected election. Our Ottawa Bureau Chief Mercedes Stevenson joins me now. So Mercedes, how close are we to an election being called?
Well, Farah, buckle up and get ready to ride the pandemic election roller coaster because things are about to kick off. After months of speculation that we've been talking about, multiple senior sources are telling Global News the election call is imminent and the writ is expected to drop sometime next week. That means Prime Minister Justin Trudeau would be taking down his own minority government in a bid to come back with a majority government. But what will that self-imposed election be about? Well, the Prime Minister was asked just that today.
It's becoming clear and obvious to all the parties in the House of Commons that you are going to call an election. What is the ballot question going to be, Mr. Prime Minister?
We continue to be focused on delivering for Canadians, getting us through this pandemic, making sure that people continue to get vaccinated.
Not much of an answer there on the record, Farah, but behind the scenes, senior Liberals say that they hope Canadians will reward the government's pandemic performance and be in a good mood after a second shot and with all of this warm summer weather. The election is still a risk, though. While the Liberals are riding high in the polls, they will need victories in key ridings where those wins could be razor thin. And the clock is ticking. With rising COVID cases and the Delta variant spreading, the window to go to the polls is rapidly closing.
And Mercedes, it's clear the leader of the Conservative Party has his concerns about an election being called.
Yeah, Aaron O'Toole has been struggling to get political traction and attention, and along with the NDP, he's accusing the Liberals of unnecessarily calling an election out of political self-interest.
Now is not the time for an election. We can all wait and go to the polls when it's safe. We need to focus on health and well-being. Like many families, we want to get past this pandemic, but let's pull together for one more fight. Let's beat COVID-19 and have an election when it's safe.
The Liberals insist that they are having trouble getting key legislation passed and note that several provinces have safely held elections during the pandemic. And of course, as we know, the results of those elections have shown that in a time of crisis, voters typically stick to the incumbents. Farah?
All right, Mercedes, you're about to get even busier. Thank you, Mercedes Stevenson in Ottawa. Still ahead, Alberta's top doctor doubles down on the protested plan to axe pandemic restrictions. The Dixie Fire, the largest wildfire in California, has completely gutted a historic town that dates back to the gold rush. This is Greenville, after flames tore through the area. Among the buildings lost, an old sheriff's office, saloons, and homes. Firefighters struggled to drive through the smoke as strong winds and dry brush are fueling the flames. The U.S. is currently fighting about 100 large active fires. About 10% of those are in California. Alberta's top doctor is feeling the heat. Deena Hinshaw is defending her decision to end the province's pandemic response plan. She has faced backlash from doctors' groups right across the country since last week's announcement that Alberta would be scaling down testing and contact tracing and would no longer require COVID-positive people to isolate. As Heather Yurex-West explains, Hinshaw insists the plan is rooted in science.
For the seventh straight day, people gathered in Alberta to protest, fearing the province is ending its pandemic response plan far too soon.
We feel very strongly that we need to continue to do the testing, to do the tracing, to do the isolating as a bare minimum response to a situation that hasn't come to a close.
As of August 16th, Alberta is scaling back things like testing, contact tracing, and isolation requirements. The plan has prompted a lot of concern. Federal Health Minister Patty Hajdu sent a letter Sunday to her Alberta Health counterpart. Our most recent modelling for Alberta forecasts a potentially more serious resurgence in cases in the coming weeks and months, fueled by the highly transmissible Delta variant. Given this epidemiological context, I am seeking to better understand the public health rationale and scientific information behind your government's recent announcements.
I feel, as I said in my op-ed, very sorry that I didn't communicate in a way that articulated the rationale, as well as the things that we're going to continue to do to manage COVID-19.
Dr. Deena Hinshaw says testing, tracing, and isolation work will shift to higher risk environments. Vaccine coverage, she says, means the healthcare system is unlikely to be overwhelmed by COVID-19, even as cases in the province begin to rise.
I believe I would not be doing my job if I kept focused on COVID as the number one risk that we face, when I don't believe it is anymore with the advent of vaccine.
We have had a laser focus on COVID for the last year to the detriment of many other processes, cancer diagnoses, wound infections, heart surgeries, all these types of things. And that's had a measurable impact.
Still, Dr. Suman Chakrabarty says it feels too soon to make these changes. But Hinshaw's reasoning, he says, is scientifically sound. Question is, how will the virus respond? The rest of the country will be watching. Heather Yurex-West, Global News, Calgary.
From orphan to Olympian. Next, the story of a U.S. diver and the unconditional devotion of his dad. Our final story tonight is more than a journey. It's an inspiration. It's about an orphan from Cambodia who dared to dream, defied all the odds, and made it to the Olympics, thanks to a special bond with his American dad. As Sean O'Shea reports, Jordan Windle is using his platform to achieve much more than a perfect dive.
For this Olympic diver who says he's afraid of heights,
Jordan Windle is focused on making the smallest splash possible. At 22, Windle is no stranger to Olympic qualifying. At 12, he was the youngest diver ever to make the Olympic trials, a high achievement considering how his life started.
I was adopted at 18 months from Cambodia.
The one thing in the world that I wanted more than anything was to be a dad.
Jerry Windle adopted Jordan after his parents dropped him off at the gates of a Cambodian orphanage.
You know, I was really malnourished at the time. I was really sick. We slept in like these baskets hanging from the ceiling.
Jerry had just retired from the U.S. Navy when the adoption service called to say they had the perfect little boy to be his son.
The moment I laid eyes on him, you know, my heart just... He was my baby.
For the most part, it's just been him and I. He has sacrificed more than anyone I know.
20 years ago, Jerry was not a typical adoptive parent.
He's a single gay man. So at the time, you know, gaining a family was just super difficult.
Jordan faced bullying growing up in Texas because of his dad's sexual orientation and because father and son don't look alike. They wrote a book together, The True Story of a Boy, sharing their story.
So I decided to get a tattoo today. I'm going to get the Cambodian flag. How I can be a role model to other children and other people in Cambodia that don't have that chance.
He wants them to be as proud as he wants all of us in America to be proud.
No matter what, I have them in my heart and I have them with me.
The diver competing for 2 countries and for the father who made it possible. Sean O'Shea, Global News, Toronto.
What an incredible athlete in every way. That is Global National for this Thursday. I'm Farah Nasser. Thank you so much for spending part of your evening with us. Tonight's Your Canada is Kempenfelt Bay in Barrie, Ontario. We love seeing your Canada, so please email us your pictures at viewers@globalnational.com. Until tomorrow, take care of yourselves and each other.